when I left school, I was 15. I went to a place in Edinburgh called the Building School, which gave you a taste for a year. Gave you a taste of all the trades in the building trade. You know, got a bit everything. And after that, I became a motor mechanic, which is strange because it's got nothing to do with the building trade, but that was all I could get at the time. And then, lo and behold, a plumber's job came up, so I got a job as a plumber. I served my time as a plumber. I was at that for about 10 years, something like that. Still playing all the time though, gigs and stuff. I first heard jazz when I was about 11 or 12, and I was playing in a brass band. And usually brass band players don't bother about anything except brass band music. But I heard a British band called the Ted Heath Band, which were truly wonderful brass players and jazz players. And that's what did it for me.
So I'll go back a little bit then. I suppose maybe having asked that is when you first started playing music and sort of loving music. So if you were in a brass band, talk me back through from where that started.
Well, that started when I was 11 and I was at school. And a friend of mine was in my class actually, was in the brass band, and he talked me into going down as well. Actually, I fancied going down once he told me what it was like. So I went down then to the brass band, and it's great. He carried on playing as well. He ended up in the forces. Yeah.
So was there a point at which you stopped playing the kind of brass band music and got into jazz?
Yeah. It was sort of when I was 19, I had tuberculosis, so I had to stop blowing. So this was a treatment at the time anyway. So that was it, brass band career over. I was doing well. I was seriously thinking in becoming a professional brass band player, like going down south and auditioning for some of the bands down there, because I was pretty good at it. I was keen on it. I loved it. That's why. I wasn't just doing it for laughs, you know. Even then.
And was that devastating at the time then to give it up?
It was devastating having TB, but no, I really, funnily enough, I don't recall being devastated not being able to play again. Because later, that same friend of mine, the trombone player that enticed me down to the band in the first place, he joined a dance band. It was a collective thing in Musselburgh, where I come from. And they asked me along because they were going to buy a bass fiddle. And they did. They bought a bass fiddle. And I got the bass fiddle, handed the bass fiddle, said, you need to learn that. So I did a bit. We played in Musselburgh, in a hall in Musselburgh. It used to be where the rugby was held. It was a beautiful hall. I can't remember the name of it. And it was a trumpet, tenor, trombone, alto, clarinet, piano, bass and drums. And the leader changed, the piano player changed to xylophone, no xylophone, vibraphone. It was that size of band, and we just played dance music every week. And then I got offered another job in Edinburgh in the big time. So I took that. Was I married or single? I can't remember. Oh, that's terrible, isn't it? I'll say yes, I was married at the time.
Still juggling 2 jobs then?
Yes, yes.
So at which point did you decide that you were going to commit fully to the music? And
Well, it was a long time after that. Maybe, well, a long time, 5 years maybe. And then I got an offer from a job in London with a band called the Alex Welsh Band, which was quite a famous band at the time. A Dixieland band though. And I was more of a sort of bebopper by this time in my head. And, but I persevered, went to London, did the Dixieland thing, and I'm so glad I did. It got rid of a lot of bebop nonsense out of my head that I wasn't right up, I wasn't equipped for at the time, and I was playing music I was more equipped for and could get more into it.
explain that to me. What do you mean by not equipped for bebop and more equipped for Dixieland? What does that mean?
I don't want to say Dixieland music is simpler music than bebop music, but it's that kind of thing. It's not so complicated. It's not so complicated. Everybody has a job to do, and you just did your job. By the time you got to the bebop thing, various people were doing various other people's jobs in the band, you know, and it got kind of more complicated to try and find a place of your own, something like that.
And what was London like at that point? What are you talking, the 60s?
60s, aye. 60, 63. I was there about 3 years with that band. Not all the time, I had a small break in between, but 63. And then...
And how does that work if you've got a family in Edinburgh and you're...
Terrible. It worked terrible. But I just had to do it. Sure, but before that, before I got down there, I was pursuing my musical career before I got down there. I worked on the boats and places like that, Southampton to New York, 3-month trips at a time, but I only did one. And I worked in theatres and also bigger dance halls up here in Scotland.
And what were the boats like? I mean, what was a trip on a boat like, 3 months there and 3 months back?
Oh, that was a great experience the first time, for a wee while, and then it got boring. Got very boring. So a lot of drink going about and stuff like that from everybody.
I mean, it's an interesting thing to understand is how you can be a kind of musician on a boat here and then come back and be a husband and a father there. They're quite different lifestyles, presumably.
Yeah, I know, but that was the way I did it. That's the only way I could do it. How could I do it? Any other way? Not do it was the other option. But it wasn't an option for me, I'm afraid, because I just loved it. And I had the goals, which I nearly got.
So
Yeah.
you brought the music into the home, obviously, because your children talk about the fact that there was...
Yeah.
And did you impose it, or did they love it?
No, I didn't. I imposed it if they were interested in music. For example, I got a drum kit for a very good friend of mine who was trading it in for another drum kit, but he wasn't. Instead of trading it in, he gave it to me for the kids, for Ronnie actually, my oldest boy. So he was playing that, and then Ronnie decided he wanted to play piano. We had a piano in the house, and his mum could teach piano. She was a piano teacher. Well, not a piano teacher, a music teacher. And so he went on piano. So John went on to drums. So that's two. But I bought a piano for Ronnie, an electric one. This is eventually when he started doing gigs. And I says, I'm only buying it on one condition, that you practice. That's all. Do what else you like, practice. And that was it. So we practiced, but not as much as he needed to, because he was quite naturally gifted. And John, he just practiced away, and both of them became very good. So that worked. By chance, I suppose. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. How could I know what I'm doing? Who knows what they're doing?
And describe what the house was like in terms of.
I beg your pardon?
Describe what the house was like in terms of engagement with music. You know, you've got your piano and your drums, and obviously the girls as well, and people coming back.
Aye, that's right. Aye, there was a lot of people used to come back to the house and play. It was quite musical, but it was all right. I mean, it didn't happen 24 hours, you know. It's amazing the amount of time there is in a day when you're doing things. It wasn't all the time, you know, constant. And we stayed in a big enough house as if they weren't happy, they could go upstairs. While I was in London, I got a hell of a experience down there, a lot of experience. Like stuff you can't buy, or you've got to be there. Not necessarily London, but with this band it was a great band. All the guys in the band could play, for starters. And I was the worst player in the band for a while. I might have been when I left as well, because they were great players, really good players. So that was, I couldn't have missed that for the world. It affected my whole musical career. The way that they addressed it and stuff, and the fun that was going to be had and stuff like that.
I bet it was quite a time in London in the 60s.
Oh, I never noticed actually. I was too busy having a good time. My wife and father came down for a wee while, but that didn't work either. So I was offered a job from a guy called Alex Shaw in Edinburgh. He phoned me up, and he'd just got this job in Mount Royal Hotel in Edinburgh, 7 nights a week. Or was it 6? Something like that. A good job. And he was asking me if I knew any bass players down there that might be interested in the job. I says, I fancy it myself. So I went away home. And that was another experience and a half, because this guy was a hell of a piano player. Wonderful. He was my mentor for years. The music was pretty sophisticated and pretty hot. I think Alec and I tried every drummer in Scotland to try and make it a proper unit, but couldn't find one at the time. So, and then there was the cabaret, which was top class cabaret. I wouldn't call it a jazz gig right out, but it was, because Alex Shaw's a jazz piano player. And he just can't play any other way. But lovely. I mean, it just, anybody can appreciate it. It's not like, you know, when people think of jazz, they have all weird kind of things going on. Oh, that's that, or it's this or that, you know, kind of music. But Alex was just beautiful music. But it was jazz. While I was in London, I did a lot of work with American musicians, and they started floating up, coming up to Edinburgh a lot, and I did the first gigs for, what was the name of the organisation? Kroll started it, the bass player. I forget what it's called. Anyway, it might still be going, I don't know. Once a month, was it? And the amount of musicians, top class musicians that went through that organisation, and I did most of the bass work there, because I think everybody else was free to do it. That's not a put down. What that is, just the fact that I'd been exposed to that kind of thing in London. So I wasn't afraid that, you know, you just go and do your thing. That's what you do. If it's not good enough, you won't get the gig again. But most of the guys up here didn't have that opportunity that I had to get that experience. So I was doing most of them, and that was a hell of an experience as well. Jesus.
What's the most memorable gig from that time? What's the one that stands out?
Oh, that's a hard one. I can't remember any names, but for by that, it's difficult anyway. The most memorable. Well, I'll tell you the most memorable. I went to London when I was in London. The rhythm section with the Alex Welsh band were booked for a jazz gig in that place that the Beatles worked in, Apple, what's it, Road or something, was it? Something like that. So the three of us got there, and when we got there, we didn't know this. There was Ben Webster, famous tenor player, Lockjaw Davies, another famous tenor player. Now the other two are more difficult, but they were famous as well. Bud Freeman, and a guy for the West Coast of the States. There were four American tenor players. We got there, and Jesus, nobody told us. He said, so we did the gig, and that was memorial. That I won't forget that ever, you know. I mean, Ben Webster. I did another 2 LPs with Ben Webster after that, separately, years later, once I'd left Welshie. No, it wasn't. It was during time I was with Alex Welsh. And they were great as well, these gigs.
And what was the point at which you stopped being the young lad coming up and you become the kind of elder statesman bringing others up? What's the transition, or how does that happen?
I never noticed that happening. I just, in reflection, now that I'm older, I notice things like that, but I didn't notice then, when it was happening. I was just playing, I think.
Was there a point though that you maybe started working with your children as well?
Oh, that was a different thing. That was I suppose it was more of a pride thing. Family pride, I don't, something like that maybe. Yeah, but they could play, so it was okay. I was proud of them. I got divorced, by the way, along the way. My wife threw me out, quite rightly. And, I just kept going.
And is that because it's quite difficult to be married to a musician?
I think it's quite difficult to be married to me. I must be selfish. I think I must be selfish.
And do you need to be as committed to music?
No, I don't think so. I've never experienced it from anybody else's point of view. Just my own. And I think I might have been. I didn't have any other way to do it, so I had to get the experience. Because I didn't have the education, no musical education, except I had a very good teacher who showed me the fingering of the bass fiddle, and the education I picked up in the brass band. So.
And would you? I mean, this is a blunt question, so sorry, but if the choice was again your marriage or playing jazz, would you still always just do the playing jazz?
I don't think I could have done anything else, no. No.
So what does it do to you, playing jazz? Why is it so important?
It lifts me up, and it brings me out myself, and it just a great feeling when you're communicating with other people. And if it's to a good, if it's to a degree that's you think's acceptable and good, it's a wonderful feeling. Wonderful. Nothing else is like it. Nothing else.
And are you continually self-critical, or are you pretty good at going?
I'm very critical, of myself,
So how often do you come out of a gig and go, that was great?
Quite a lot, I mean, I know people that come off a good gig and don't say it was great, and I just can't understand that. Because for it to be good, everybody's got to, have the same input and think it was great. The biggest change. Education, I think. There's more education now. And less actually doing what I was telling you I was doing, just going and doing it and getting the experience. There's more education than experience. I've always thought this, but I've always envied people with education because they do things that I can't do, and but it turns out that everybody that's educated is doing what they can do, but nobody's doing what I do. To the same degree. And always, when I was a kid, I was always knocking rhythms out on pots and pans and stuff like that, I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but, and the camaraderie was just amazing amongst musicians until you get to the state where there's a lot of money involved, then the camaraderie goes out the window sometimes. But that's the same with every profession. So, where did it come from? Just a desire to do it. I don't know where the desire came from. No, but it came, wherever it came from. Here it comes again.